Good morning.
Or good afternoon.
Or
good evening, or wherever you are living. Well, there's people watching from, Australia. I think right now it's middle of the night, or I don't know.
Sometimes it's the next day.
Yes, or in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's later in the day as well. Hey, somebody's already here. Let's say hey.
Hey, somebody's here.
Somebody's here. Knock, knock.
Good morning, Monica.
What is it? It's Mr. McFeely. Good morning, Monica. Happy Tuesday. Who's at the door? I love Mr. Rogers. I'm a total big Mr. Rogers nerd. But today's Tuesday. It is day number 1 of this. I'm very excited about this devotional, because last year, our word for the year last year was surrender. And boy, God, really. Yeah. Hey, good morning, Christina. How you doing? God was like, surrender. It's 2020.
Right.
So that was our word. And we were like, boy, that came to fruition, And so we really spent the whole year thinking about that. So I love anything talking about surrender, because letting go and letting God is something that is, it's hard to do. And especially when you're dealing with heart disease. So that's what we're talking about this week. Very excited about it. First things first, though, we want to do a little housekeeping. You'll need to know about 2 links that are important. So there's a couple of links in the description. One is on our heart disease support group description. So it's only going to be in our private heart disease support group on Facebook. And that is just so that you can be connected to our broadcast. So you're going to want to click the StreamYard link. And that is going to connect your name and your face, so we can see you when you comment. We can bring you up on screen. And so just make sure to do that. Only if we're live with you, though. If you're watching this on replay, don't even worry about it. It doesn't make any difference. But if you're live with us in our group, then go ahead and click that StreamYard link. The other link that everybody has is the YouVersion Bible app devotional link, so that you can follow along with any devotional that we're doing. So any given week, you're going to see in the description a link to the devotional that we're doing that particular week. It'll prompt you to download the YouVersion Bible app if you haven't done that before. Or if you're on desktop, you don't have to download the app, obviously. It'll just take you to the website, and then you can follow along with us on that specific devotional.
And if you are new to our broadcast, new to these devotionals that we do, also I wanted to mention, if you are watching us on YouTube, we are now going live on YouTube.
That's right.
And so if you are part of that YouTube audience and you are new to us, okay, my name is Javie.
I'm Jessica.
And we are with Underdog Ninja. And here we focus on 3 things. It's faith, character, and action. When it comes to fighting heart disease, we believe that those things are the pillars, the standard, if you will, that will help you to live a full and happy life while you're fighting heart disease.
That's
right. Okay. Heart disease is it's a very, very deadly disease, and it overwhelms us emotionally, physically, everything. But we believe that we start with our faith, our foundation. Absolutely. And we believe that foundation will help lead us to all the other characteristics, the character and the action piece. But we start here every Tuesday and Saturday morning with these devotionals. We start our day with these devotionals. These devotionals are just devotionals that we believe that address those areas and the topics that we face while we're fighting this disease. Life continues on, right? Life continues to be stressful and has its ups and downs. But when you add this disease into the mix, it seems to be a little bit more challenging. Some of us just can't find our way out of that, dark place. That dark place, right? Yeah. And so that's our mission here. That's our mission every morning, to help you through whatever challenge you might be facing in your day.
I want to clarify. You said Tuesday and Saturday. It's Tuesday through Saturday.
Did I?
Yeah. But I just want to clarify. It's not 2 days a week. It's 5 days a week.
I'm sorry. I screwed that up.
It's like Monday for us on Tuesdays, because it's our first day. Right. Oh, no, that's okay. It's fine. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that it's 5 days a week. But absolutely right. This is the foundation where you begin. And I wanted to say good morning to a family member. Speaking of our family, Mr.
Hey, good morning,
CL. Here. Good morning. Hey. How are you doing? So are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to it.
So again, this week we're talking about surrendering. and letting go and letting God. And this is day 1. So this says surrender. Who, me?
That's right.
So keep in mind, we haven't read ahead. We don't read ahead on these.
That's how I was at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, we were like,
What?
Oh, you were serious. Okay, when my husband Martin and I were newlyweds, we had a plan for our lives and believed God would get us there in the not too distant future. For a while, things seemed to be going very well until Martin started having symptoms that turned out to be a brain tumor. Martin emerged from this experience with some challenging disabilities, and we were left uncertain about the future that we'd imagined. Suddenly, we weren't so sure of our life's plan anymore. We went back and forth, we prayed, and we spent hours talking it through with our wisest friends and advisors as we adjusted to this new direction for our lives. Fast forward a few years, I became pregnant, and as we became a family of 3, as we figured out all the basics of parenting logistics, we learned I was pregnant again with twins. I know how that is. After they were born, we again made adjustments and actually started to feel in charge again, at least a little. I was still working on church staff, traveling to concerts, and writing and recording with 3 kids in tow. I even spent the few spare hours I had working on a doctorate in worship studies. Martin was coaching baseball and was active in our community, and together with help, we were holding down the fort at home. Well, a couple of years later, we became pregnant with baby number 4. It was a fairly uneventful pregnancy until my 37th week ultrasound, when I learned that our little boy would be born with cleft lip and possibly a cleft palate. I felt a sadness begin to swallow up my dreams of the beautiful, flawless baby boy we expected. As I grieved, I worked to surrender the expectations I had initially clung to. There was nothing else to do. Don't Christians trust God in every situation and give him glory no matter what? They do, but they hurt too. Our pastor friend, Bill, said, I think in this season of life, you need to just surrender. Just you give it to God and then you sit tight. God tells us to consider him, to immerse ourselves in his word, and to meditate on his truth. When we do this, we're positioning ourselves for a blessed life regardless of our circumstances. I tend to think of every hardship or challenge as a complication in my normal, chilled out state. But these things are just what we walk through. The greater question is, how do we walk through what we walk through? So they are just what we walk through. The question is, how do we walk through what we walk through? Rather than being an inconvenience, a disability can be a tool in God's hand, a way for his glory to be displayed. God has kept on doing good things that we could never have planned through the unique, unwanted circumstance of Martin's disability and each of life's other challenges. I understand that surrender may seem forced on us when the obstacles are supersized. But what about when the challenges seem more ordinary? Is complete open-handed surrender still the secret to a blessed life? Is it still the door that opens into God's presence, where the psalmist insisted there is fullness of joy and pleasures forever? I believe that it is. Not just in the losses, but even in the victories, surrender is the secret to a life of joy. I want to surrender my life to the one who loves and cares for me, the one who knows and does what is best and brings himself glory in the process. God deserves it. So then they have these questions. How do you describe your trust in God's love and care for you? In what ways do you struggle to give up control of your life to God? In what ways have you surrendered to God? And how have you experienced joy and blessing through open-handed surrender to God? How could you begin the process of surrender to God? So I'm going to go over the verses.
Yeah, just go ahead and finish that and then we'll address what's going on.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
So Psalm 55:22 says, give your burdens to the Lord and he will take care of you. He will not permit the godly to slip and fall.
Okay, so I want to address this, but it looks like we, for some reason, dropped one of our feeds to our Facebook community.
Yeah.
So right now I don't know why. So hopefully you could catch us on either the business page or YouTube or any of the other groups or any other Facebook pages. So, but if you are catching this on replay, I apologize.
No, that's okay. And actually, I still see it streaming into the group. So it could it could be a mistake.
Right.
But we'll just keep going. So number one, I wanted to say hi. Good morning to Vera. Hey, Vera, how are you doing?
Good morning.
And I love it. Your sister says, How cool. You watch it on my TV on YouTube. I love it. Yes. That's what I'm talking
That's
about.
awesome.
Perfect. That was our plan.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I wanted to address all of the things in this devotional because this was a little lengthy, but like amazing because I'm actually liking that there was some extra stuff in here.
Oh my gosh. We could so relate to this story.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, anyone with heart disease can relate to what she was talking about with her husband Martin's disability, like the whole brain tumor thing, the new way of living, the new way of life, adjusting to different things you can and cannot do anymore.
Man, this is the thing. When I started fighting this disease, we were just friends and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started dating, and then when we got engaged,
mm-hmm.
we had a lot of, we made a lot of hopes and dreams. We started creating, planning our life together and what it was going to be like.
Right.
At that point, my older kids, they're up and grown up. They're starting their lives. And we really thought we had it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had my disease under control.
Yep.
Which was, especially at that point in that journey, it really was an understatement. I really didn't have
right now control. We know. Yeah.
But then soon after, we were blessed with our twin daughters.
Right.
And just having twins, if any of you have twins, you know how challenging that is.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is my disease continued to progress. We still had those challenges. We had new challenges. We had
different challenges that
we had to absorb with having newborns. I had newborns again.
Yep.
And here I thought I was done, and we're not done. And so that was one thing.
Yeah.
And then just all the different battles. And then recently with what our daughter's going through.
Yeah. And they both have a lot of, not a lot, but they both have their own medical issues, but the one of them has the majority of the current challenge.
Yeah. But she's always, she's always had some issues.
Yeah.
And we're always having to, look, we're the types of people that we think we have it. We plan, we figure it out. We're troubleshooters.
Mm-hmm.
We take pride in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're fixers. We figure it out. We're resourceful. But then God says, hey, I need you to just be children of God right now.
Yeah.
I need you to just trust me.
Yeah.
I need you to not be Peter right now, where you fix everything and you question me, and and we're really, because we're such doers and stuff, like we're so like problem solve. So we're always problem solving mode. And it could be to a fault, and sometimes you just have to let go and let God. And so this really, this is really for us this week. This devotional really spoke to us. And just anything that says surrender, I'm all in, because it's something that, is a process, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Surrender is always you always have to try harder to surrender, because it always means something different. And we always aren't quite nearly into it as we think. We think we've surrendered and we haven't. And it's like God starts to peel back the layers of what you've surrendered, and how much you've surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's why I love the surrender studies, because we can always be growing in it. We can always be surrendering more. We can always be taking one more thing and putting it in God's hands. One more layer, one more level of surrender. And because we spent, like I said, the whole year just like talking about surrender. And we still definitely we have to surrender daily.
Yeah, absolutely. There was this part,
Which part?
Scroll down. Keep going. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Which part was it?
They were just talking about understanding surrender right there.
I understand that surrender may seem forced on us when the obstacles are supersized, but what about the challenges when they seem more ordinary? Is complete open-handed surrender still the secret to a blessed life? Yeah, you have to surrender. It says, I want to surrender my life to the one who loves and cares for me. God wants us to surrender everything. Like
Right.
not just the big, huge things like heart disease and all unexpected,
Right.
pregnancies, but like the little things where we're having to go up the mountain, the daily parts of that. So when you're surrendering the whole issue or whole experience or whole life-changing event to God, there's also all the little daily pieces that you have to surrender. So like when you're fighting heart disease, it's the daily stuff that is sometimes the hardest to surrender because you're weary, you're tired, you're confused, you don't feel like you're making progress.
Right. It's almost that you really have to give up all the little things, because when you're in the midst of these heavy circumstances, you're fighting your disease, and you're questioning, well, what is this doctor saying? What's this doctor saying? What does this test say? And then you're questioning your physical ability. Can I go out and provide for my family? Am I going to be able to enjoy time with my kids? And you have all these things in question, but then daily life happens. Okay. Just little things.
Yep.
And those little things will tend to be the thing that drives you over the edge.
Right. It's the straw that broke the camel's back or whatever we say.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes those are the most important things, because if you don't surrender the little things, because it's the little things that build the big things, right? Because we talk about the compound effect, and anybody knows, all the dollars add up. I mean, all the minutes add up, right? It's the little things that build the big things. So when you don't surrender those little things, you are not surrendering the big ones. You're not surrendering the building blocks to what it takes to create shifts and change in the big things. It's the daily tasks, the daily habits, the daily thoughts, the daily words that we say that build our life. And when you're not surrendering those little moments, thinking that God doesn't care or he's not paying attention, or that maybe we don't even have to work as hard to surrender it because they're so little, you're like, well, it's just little stuff. That's what builds the big stuff. So just remember that when God wants us to surrender everything, he wants us to stop. How many times during the day have you just stopped and prayed over something small? Just been like, okay, Jesus.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older.
Well, I was just going to say is that I never used to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are little things, right? So you don't really think about bringing the little stuff to God.
Right.
But he wants you to bring everything, just like you're saying. So I've gotten this habit of bringing all those little things. And one of the things that I've been recently doing is, I don't want to always be the child that continues to complain. Well, can you fix this? What about this? Daddy, what about this? And
now that you fixed
broke
this, I've got that, yeah.
Right? I also want to be the one giving glory to him. So one of the other things I'm really trying to focus on is glorifying him and thanking him for the little things. Thanking him for putting breath in my lungs today. Thanking him for turning on the lights for me today, allowing me to live in the house that I'm living in.
Right.
We bought this house a few years ago, and the front lawn was just trashed. And
he was like, this is going to be my new job.
Right. And everybody around us is, you feel this peer pressure because everybody else has these
the green lawns.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, last year, I tried to do stuff, and it just wasn't working. It really was a failure. It got all these holes everywhere.
Patches.
And so, this year, it started late last season, I started filling some of those holes, and then we aerated and planted some seed. And so I've been really trying to care for it. And God has really taught me a lesson in that, in identifying the holes in my life, filling it, and then nurturing it, putting the fertilizer, putting the nutrients in those holes, focusing on that, planting the seed, and being patient, waiting on it and watering it. And he's really taught me something. And I'm like, Lord, thank you for that. Thank you for teaching me to wait. Thank you for teaching me how to nurture. Thank you for teaching me how to identify my my potholes, my weak spots, right?
That's a good word.
And boy,
Christina says, dang, I needed this too. We all need it. We all need it every single day. That's such a good word. Surrender is sometimes just waiting on God and hearing his voice. One of the things I wanted to read back to this says, as I grieved, so she's grieving, right? She felt this sadness that she was going to have a baby that had a cleft palate. And so that was not what she expected. That's not what was in her plans. Now she's got to change everything she's going to be doing about this child. And sorry, my nose itches really bad. And she's grieving she's not grieving. She didn't lose the baby. She's grieving the loss of her expectations. How many of us, when something like heart disease hits our life, we talk a lot about how you grieve the life you thought you were going to have. Yeah. Ooh. Right. And so I wanted to read what she said. I worked to surrender the expectations I had initially clung to. Our expectations, really, our plans, what we thought we wanted, that's what really sets us up for disappointment more than anything. I think we probably wouldn't feel as much loss. There's things that are obviously lost, like a loss of a loved one or, a loss of a job. And I mean, there's things that feel like we lost something, but there's a lot of things in life we feel like we lost something because it changed from our expectations. God knew it was going to be like that the whole time. And it was always going to be that way. But we don't know that. So we make plans and we have expectations. And our problem a lot of times isn't that we had a loss. It's that we grieved our expectations. We clung to our expectations too much. Yeah. We're not able to be flexible enough to move from what we thought was going to happen to reality, what was actually going to happen in our lives the whole time. It was always going to happen that way. And we have to understand that it was always going to be that way. We just didn't know it. And we had these expectations. And we have to know that when we make those plans and have those expectations, that's all that they were. It was us being human and making plans because that's what we do. Right. But we have to make those plans with the caveat, with that thing in it and saying, okay, God willing. That's why we say Lord willing, because we have to understand that I'm making plans with no view of the future. And I have to know that those completely cannot happen. And I have to be okay with it. Because whatever God has is better. I read a story this morning of somebody that I follow on Facebook. And she said exactly this. So it's so timely. She said she had to learn, she's been learning more and more, surrender to accept what is instead of grieving what is not. To celebrate what God is doing instead of grieving what he is not. And she was on vacation and her whole vacation changed. Like the different people that that were going to come with her, family members, they ended up getting COVID and couldn't come. And then she ended up injuring herself, to a point where she couldn't walk, on the vacation in a tropical place. She's like, and so she's sitting up in her hotel, the whole time. Right. And God really isolated her and said, okay, now this is what I want you to do. So he really changed her while she was there and had her studying and journaling. She journaled dozens of pages and just really had some time with God off on this, island. And God sometimes will take you out to an island and then
I know
he'll isolate you.
You must really need to be isolated. He has to take you to an
island and cripple you. No, but it's just she had to be wheeled onto the plane. She really injured herself.
Wow.
Yeah. And but her attitude was so great because she was like, I just surrendered it and said, she goes, God really prepared me for that moment, because she goes, it was so funny. The day before that happened, she does her morning reading, and she had written down that to trust God in all the moments and to let whatever he's saying determine, what your expectations are or something like that. And she's like, so he totally prepared me for what happened the next day. He already knew that was going to happen. Right. And so, but her attitude coming home, she goes, God really, I left a changed person, and it wasn't because I was injured. I left different than I came. And because God really spoke to me while I was there, and it was such a blessed time. I just didn't expect to have that. It was different than she expected.
Right. And the blessings that she received during that time are everlasting. It will have so many ramifications in her life, rather than her just going on vacation. Look, everybody likes going on vacation. Yep. You go on vacation, you relax, and you have fun, everything. But when the vacation's over, it's over. And sometimes we have to recover from those vacations, right? But instead, think about that. God was able to pour into her. And so that vacation ends up being a priceless something priceless. It ends up being a precious gift in her life because what she's able to do now, what she's going to do moving forward based off of that experience is going to be, it's going to be priceless. One of the things I really want to point out, like your story, the story that you're talking about, or whether it's heart disease, those expectations that we hold on to, again, I've said this before, when we hold on to things, it's hard to release them and let go. But we really, I think we may use this word a lot, and it's overlooked, about letting go and let God.
Yeah.
But you're saying it,
but we don't let go.
But you don't let go.
Yeah.
You still have these expectations. You still have the expectations of other people, right?
And of God.
So when you're fighting this disease, what kind of expectations are you holding other people up to?
Yeah.
That's unrealistic. You're expecting them to change because you are forced to change. Because let's be honest, if you weren't fighting this disease, you probably wouldn't have changed your lifestyle. Right. You wouldn't change your habits. But now you're expecting it because you're put in this position and you need to. You're expecting everybody else to turn around, and it should be just as easy, or they should be able to support you, or whatever else. And some are, but some aren't. And we have expectations for other people, and we get frustrated. We hold on to those things, and we're not allowing God to intervene in those relationships,
right?
And allow God to speak to their hearts, and allow God to do something in their life. And we take the focus off ourselves and put it onto that problem, onto that expectation. And we don't put it onto what God is wanting us to do.
Right.
Okay. What I found through surrender, and we continually have to learn this. Okay. Especially people like us.
Yep.
But what I found is, last month we talked a lot about clarity. When you let go, and you truly surrender, completely surrender that expectation of life, or expectation in people, expectation in your job, whatever it may be, expectation in your lawn.
In your lawn, yeah.
Okay. You let that go. You give it to God. You get clarity.
Yeah.
You get positioned into what God is wanting to do for your life.
Yeah.
The story you brought up. I believe, why would God do something like that? Allow something like that to happen in a very timely moment in this person's life.
Right. Yeah.
I believe that is to position. Usually this is the case. He needs you to get some clarity in order to position you for something he needs you to do.
Yeah.
Or a bigger blessing, or something that's coming down the road that you need to be prepared for.
God's all about alignment. Right. I mean, he's all about a lot of things. But one of the things I've noticed is that becoming aligned with God it's not just being aligned with God, because how would we know exactly how to be aligned with God? He's wanting us to not only be aligned with Him, He's leading us to that, but He wants us to be aligned with the work that He wants us to do. So opportunities, divine intervention, divine appointments with other people, like people we're meeting. I mean, gosh, lately, just with building our board, we've been absolutely aligned with these people that are on our board that are incredible. I don't even understand. They just came out of the woodwork, out of nowhere. People we met a month ago, a week ago, a day ago. And it's really a God thing. It's so incredible. And there's no way, I don't even understand how I found these people. God just provides for what He has you doing. And when he's called you to something, it could be a nonprofit like we're doing. It could be parenting your kids. We had a gentleman that we were on a meeting with the other day tell us a story about how he grew up with, many siblings. I think it was 8 kids or something like that. And he remembers distinctly his mom. And I believe she was a single mom at one point, and she was alone and just trying to raise these kids. And he remembers distinctly that she would have days where he would hear her pray for God. I don't know how I'm going to feed these kids. I've done everything I can do. I know how to do. I don't know where the food's coming from tomorrow. So God, I need you to show up and provide if I'm going to feed these kids. And, of course she was there. It wasn't like that all the time, but there were moments where, we've all been there where you're like, wow, today I just don't know what I'm going to do about this. And God, I need you to show up. And he said there would be a bag of groceries on the porch the next morning.
Yeah.
That's takes me out every time. That's what God does. He does it in the little things and he does it in the big things.
Right.
But surrendering your expectations and just focusing on God and being aligned.
Yeah.
Aligning yourself with your calling. Her calling was over those kids. And guess who was the one that showed up to make sure she could fulfill that calling, no matter what? God.
Right.
So God will show up in those moments, but you have to surrender and say, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm showing up as much as I can. I just don't know what else I could do. You got to do everything you can. Okay. So that you can, feel like it's not you. Because sometimes I think God wants us to show up, not just because he wants God shows up for those who show up for themselves. Like that's not a thing. It's what it is that he wants us to be in partnership.
Right.
So he knows us, he designed us, right? Mm-hmm. He knows that if something isn't happening and we're not doing everything, it's going to be, because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. I mean, it's my fault. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He doesn't want it to be that. He wants it to be that we've done everything we can and that we fall short because we're not God, meaning we don't fall short like we failed, but we only go up to this ceiling of humanity. And then God takes over and then the glory is God's. He doesn't want it to be all about us. He wants it to be about his glory because he wants people to come to him so that he can save them and love them and be with them.
Right.
And the only way that they're going to know it's him is if it's him and not us. No one's coming to God if we're the ones that did it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he does want people to see that our lives are blessed and that we do live with a bigger power over a God over us, a loving God, and that our lives are more full, even when we go through these things, so that they will know that there's hope. Here's the thing. Living with God doesn't take away all our problems. Right? We have all the human problems, but it's my life with God as opposed to without it. I didn't grow up with God in my life.
That's yeah.
Okay. Mm. Our kids are fortunate. They're going to grow up with Jesus in their life, but we've even talked to them. Lots of people don't grow up this way. They know the difference between living without God and living with God. And it's a night and day experience, literally night. And then it's day. That's the most, the most accurate use of night and day I've ever had. Like it's night and then it's day. And it's a huge difference where there's hope in every situation. There's possibility and opportunity in every situation. I get to choose now through Jesus being involved that there's hope.
Some of the most optimistic people that I've met are not the people that have been given everything. Mm-hmm. You think, right? Our first reaction to people that are optimistic, what makes them optimistic? Well, mm-hmm. they've had everything given to them. Maybe they've lived in a wealthy family. Maybe they had people that supported them and they had a good family structure and they had people that poured into them. Okay, sure. That's a possibility. But most of the time, the most optimistic people are the people that have gone through it the most, mm-hmm. that have had a hard life. And they don't want to spend any moment back in that dark place, giving glory to that dark place. They see possibility and hope in everything that God has created.
Well, most of the time, the people that have the most hope because they've gone through the most is that those people have gone through the most opportunities for God to show them hope. So all that adversity is where God shows up the most, and not meaning he isn't showing up in things that are easy, but you just don't notice. Mm-hmm. Who's noticing if God shows up when everything's working out? I mean, as far as obviously, when he's working out, it's like, yeah, that was God. But I mean, if everything's going, well, and nothing bad is happening and nothing's rocky or challenging, you're not like, God's really showing up. Like, it's just like, this is life is good. But when there's adversity and you wake up hopeful in the morning and things turn around and miracles happen. And even when miracles aren't happening, how in the world am I able to be so optimistic in the midst of such adversity? That can only be the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So it's so obvious and so apparent in our surrender to God in those dark moments when he shows up and we become different people. He doesn't change our circumstances. He changes us. That's why our lives change with God, because he changes us into different people, into stronger people, into more patient people, into more compassionate, empathetic people, into people who are fighters, into people who refuse to take no for an answer, to be pushed down by any adversity. In fact, he empowers us to create a person in ourselves that is just, I grow into this person, or have grown now into this person that is just willing to take on anything and say, you know what, I'm not willing for anything to take me down, because I have in the past. I know what it's like to live in situations that are dark and not have hope and just be taken down by it, by my own choices, by my lack of hope, by my lack of my willingness to follow God. Mm-hmm. And it's a disaster. It's really a dumpster fire. I mean, it's like it's the worst feeling in the world. Dark, dark moments in my life. And I absolutely, you're right. I refuse to go back to those moments. And I get to choose. And that's what God wants to empower in us, is that we get to choose him, right, and we get to choose a life with him, and to never be in that dark place again, mm-hmm, in a way where we don't have hope.
Do you remember, of course it was before 2020, but remember when God spoke to us about surrender?
Yeah.
It had come on the heels of a lot of different things. Okay. We were facing a lot of medical challenges with our daughter. We just went through a year of just nonstop. I mean, going to the ER, all these different specialists, all these different things, not knowing. And it's very frustrating. And it's very frustrating to this day, but where we don't know what we can do for our daughter. She gets in these pain cycles where we can't do anything for her to help take away the pain. It's very hard.
It's hard as a parent.
And then going to the doctors, and the doctor's not giving us answers, and off to the next one. We went on. That was a year of that. On top of me fighting my disease.
Right.
I have been battling. There are times that it hurts to wake up in the morning. I know I have to get up, and I had a very physical job where I'm using my hands. I'm having to also it's taxing on the mind, very stressful in stressful environments, and I have to have the ability to perform, to be able to do my job well, because a lot of people are depending on me, and not only my family depending on me to bring in the income, but people are depending me on my customers were depending on me. So waking up in pain and wondering if I even had the strength, the ability to do what I needed to do. I mean, there are times that my muscles felt like they were just going to fall apart. It was very, very painful. And I had been dealing with that for a number of years. And so we had gone through all that and trying to resolve those things and trying to find ways and all the ups and downs. But in the meantime, we did have those moments where we got that clarity. We received blessing. God was moving.
Yeah. And it may seem like everything's falling down around you. I mean, right when we were a month before we were dealing with her diagnosis, you had a heart attack.
Yeah.
That was when you had your one and only heart attack. Yeah. But I mean,
one and only, all that triple decker, right?
Yeah. Well, 3 in 1. Yeah. It was 3 heart attacks in one day. But I mean, the only time you've had heart attacks, but it was all at once. I mean, you were still recovering from that. We were still reeling from like, how did that even happen? Yeah. And then And then our daughter's thing started up a month later, actually not even a month later, I think it was 3 weeks. And it was just like, wow, God, wow. And so he had already been talking to us about surrender to kind of prepare us for all that. It was going to happen. This was all going to happen this way. And it did. And God really protected us through this, by the way. This is the thing we have to remember when we're surrendering our adversity to God, is that you have to look at the situation and go, what is God doing in this? Because there's way too many situations during all of our adversity. We haven't even talked about all the stuff we've ever been through. Some of it's not even relevant to what we talk about here, but there's, of course, all of us have all kinds of situations, relationship situations, financial situations,
sure.
all kinds of really tragic stuff happening right in our lives. And we both are no stranger to crazy dark days. Okay.
Sure.
But in all of those situations, God has always shown up, and people would argue, well, then why didn't he just take the whole thing away? Well, I'm the person I am because of these situations, and God has always worked it out in the end. But during that situation, in the details, there are things that didn't make sense. Like, how is it that the timing for your heart attack was exactly what it was? Because if it had been any other timing, you wouldn't be here. Yeah. Okay, so God is controlling all the details of these situations. And if we don't look for it, we'll miss it. And we'll think, why didn't you just stop that, God? Gosh, it's the whole, why? But when I watch him work in the details like that, wow, that doesn't make sense. That was the timing. Like wow. And he creates a whole series of events that coincide and align. And when I was talking about that, back to us saying he aligns, he's all about alignment with timing, alignment with people, alignment with him. And so that things work out exactly the way that he wants them to work out. And he's protecting us, right? But he's allowing us, he's spotting us in the gym, like we talked about. He's like our spotter. He's allowing us just enough pressure to form us into the people that we need to be, to learn the lessons we need to learn, to become amazing humans. And I'm telling you, there's no way that dumpster fire of a girl I used to be when I was young would be the woman I am now if it wasn't for the stuff I'd been through and God taking me through it. There's no other way. And I know that about myself. We don't like it as humans. We don't like that it takes challenges and adversity and then having to completely surrender that to God in order to change and grow. But ultimately, isn't that what we want as people? We just don't like that that's what it takes. We don't like that it takes so much time in the gym to get ripped.
Right. But what I'm trying to get at, though, that at that point, with all those things going around us, happening during that time, and then God gave us this word about surrender, really spoke to both of us about having to surrender. There were things in our life that we had to surrender, things that were holding us back with being in alignment. And then, okay, here comes, you're right, after I went through my heart attack and all that stuff, but there were still things that at that point I needed to surrender in order to listen to him, in order to understand him, get some clarity, understand where we're going, and to be in alignment for things that were to come. How we were going to know, how was it there was going to be this worldwide pandemic? Who would have called that?
I mean, nobody's predicting that. Yeah.
But through that time, because we had learned to surrender, we identified these areas in our life that we really needed to surrender. We became closer to God. We learned a lot more about ourselves.
Yeah.
We understood more about what he was calling us to do. And he really prepared us for these moments, even we continue to go through.
And that's the other thing, is
prepared us for that.
Things that are going to happen down the road, you need to be prepared for that. And God's the only one that knows how to prepare you and what to prepare you for.
But if I would have kept holding on to my expectations, I had expectations of who am I supposed to be as the breadwinner of the home, the father of the home, the husband. I had expectations in my mind who that person was.
Your identity.
My identity.
Yeah.
Even after battling this disease so long and going through that, I still had to dive in a little bit more. I still what God identified with me in those moments is I was still holding on to something. I was still holding on to, well, you called me to this career so I could, and you called me to this area, you called me to this job so I could provide for my family and so I could do this job. And I had all these obligations. You blessed me with these things, but now I can't do it. Now I am questioning my ability to do it.
Mm.
And how can I, why am I being put in this situation? And what it was these expectations on how I was going to do this and how I was going to provide.
Hey, Lee, how are you doing? She says, love this discussion on how God prepares us for adversity. Yes.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's through other adversity. Absolutely. Sometimes it's just through a person's word. Sometimes it's through his word when we're reading. Sometimes it's through just prayer and him just giving us, preparing our heart for the adversity. But a lot of times it's through other adversity. It's making us stronger. I mean, people talk about training for a marathon. They're going to go out and run from a non-runner. Okay. I'm going to go torture myself for this long through an entire marathon. Do you know what I'm going to do to prepare for torturing myself? I'm going to torture myself a whole bunch at first. And I'm going to torture myself until, so that's in my head, because I'm not a runner. Like, I know runners don't agree, but I'm making that a point though, is that I know that this is going to be something super hard that I want to do. But you know what I'm going to do to prepare myself? Do a whole bunch of really hard stuff. So isn't that how nature works? Isn't that how it works? Don't you train for these things first? You don't just throw yourself into a marathon. If I went out and tried to run a marathon right now, not only would I physically fail, I would mentally be super discouraged, but it would just be like nonsense. Why would I go just do that? I wouldn't be ready. I wouldn't be prepared. And so we have to think about the surrender that has to happen during that training. The surrender that has to happen to how slowly it feels like you're going, how slowly you're progressing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many things involved in training for something coming. And God does that for us. And that's why he's so amazing, because all we have to do is go, whatever you're doing, God, I'm on board. I surrender my expectations. I surrender my plans. And I have to commit to not being ticked off when that doesn't happen. Even when I do surrender it and I'm still like, oh, but I really wanted that vacation, like she said. I really wanted.
We had a vacation.
I know. Everybody had a vacation in 2020. They had to cancel. But yeah, I mean, but that happened. I
held on to that for a while.
Yeah, you did. But we're human. And we have to, even when we surrender the expectations, we have to work with God to not hold on to it. That thing. Yeah. Understand, most of what we're saying because we go through it. He's saying this to you because he's holding on to stuff too. And so am I. And we're really passionate, fiery, action-centered people. And when we have plans, dang it, we have plans. And that's it.
We don't want no one to interrupt those plans.
And so that's why I identify with Peter so much. But it's something that we have to do daily. And then, really work with God and say, you know what? You know me. You know my heart. I don't want to just do something opposite of you. I really don't. My heart is to really follow you, Lord. But I help me in my weakness, in my humanity.
And that's why we believe these devotionals, going alongside your prayer life and your study time with God, you getting to know God, that relationship, just like any other relationship, you work on it. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to be in alignment with that relationship, to understand where this is going. So look, we try to really understand where we're going, where God's leading us, but God shows us in our study, in our prayer life, and in what the Holy Spirit speaking into our life to help us decide and help us to understand what direction we're going in every aspect of our life. However, when we miss that mark, we also have to be willing to say, okay, I misunderstood, or I missed what was happening, or understand that God knows better, that maybe that direction was just for a season.
Yes.
And now he needs you to do this.
Right.
Okay. And
Everything
What
isn't
we've-
always as it seems.
What we've had to understand that over the years, it was really hard, but now it's become a little bit easier in the way that we know that God's in control
Mhm.
always. And if this is happening and he's allowing it to happen, then we need to be obedient to that. And being obedient has been the biggest blessing of my life. Look,
Yep.
a lot of us have a really hard time with surrender, right? We think we're weak. We
Mhm.
think by
We're out of control.
surrendering, the word surrender is giving up,
Yeah.
that it's failure.
Mhm.
But actually, it's the key to our success.
Yeah.
It's the key to our strength.
Right.
By surrendering, we are strengthening ourselves.
Yes.
By surrendering, we are getting clarity. By surrendering, we are seeing things in a whole new light.
You're seeing things from God's perspective.
Yeah.
By surrendering.
Absolutely.
You're surrendering to God's perspective on your
Mhm.
life, and seeing that through his eyes is a huge blessing and a huge strengthening aspect to our walk. I want to jump into some comments here. Charlotte says, hey, Charlotte, surrender is the key, which I struggle with sometimes, but listening. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. And in talking about it, what God's really speaking into this today is a lot of really good points he's bringing up, because I think we don't dive in enough to what surrender really is, and doing it. We say, surrender, let God, let go and let God.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
But it doesn't go further than
Right.
that, right?
Lee, hey, Lee, as God remakes us in his image, we have to give up titles and roles that we have used to define ourselves. So it's not just our disease with heart disease that we're using to define ourselves. You talked about the provider, like all the things you feel like are your responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, titles and roles. Absolutely. Yes. It's all about, what is God calling me to do, not, and calling me to be, not what am I defining myself as and calling myself to be necessarily. It's what does God have for me? Because almost always, it's better than what we have. Your mom says, art piece, rise from the ashes. It's an art piece. Oh, that's awesome. See, she's speaking your language. Yeah. Learning more and more. Good, Monica. She said, I wanted to bring this up. Once I surrender, God changes everything, and more again, so much. Sometimes I have to stop and breathe. Remember that what he's done before. Yes. So I wanted to bring that up. So what he's done before, and say, surrender to him, get out of the driver's seat and let him take the wheel. Thy will be done. So one of the reasons why it gets easier and easier to surrender, even though it never gets completely easy, because we're human, is that for me personally, half the reason I'm even able to surrender like I am now is because I know what God's done in the past. In fact, that's what we bring up most of the time.
Yeah.
When we're talking to each other and we're reminding each other, we're like, okay, but we got to surrender.
But we know,
but we reference, if God did this, then he can do this, or he will do this. I mean, he doesn't change. God never changes.
He wouldn't call us to this. He wouldn't call us this far to say, okay, you're on your own.
Yeah, I'm out. I give up. No. And part of the reason why the Bible is so powerful is because a lot of the accounts, the historical accounts he brings up in the Bible, why they're in there, why God made sure they were in there, is to prove to us, is to make sure that we understand and identify with the situations that I am the same God I was then.
Absolutely.
If I'm doing this, then how am I not doing this thing I've told you I'm already going to do in your life? If God's already told you and spoke something into your life, by the way, if God speaks it, it is done already. He doesn't live inside time. If he's already said, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we're in his boat, and that whole entire passage in the Bible about Jesus being in the boat, we brought this up lots of times. Surrendering that God is in the boat with you. Jesus is driving the mission. Jesus is driving your family. Jesus has your kids. Jesus, you just got to be on board in the boat that he's already put you in, and know that, why are you so upset about the storm? I'm in the boat, he said. Right? Like, we need to hear this today. Yeah. Why are you so upset? Because I'm going to make this right. I have a plan. I have an destination, an ending point. And you're going to go with me because you're in the boat. Unless you dive out of the boat, you're going to end up there. But you have to be on board with me and let me drive. And knowing what he's done in the past always drives me to remember who he is. It's never, well, does God want to do this for me based on who I am? That's not how it works. by the way. God doesn't do things based on who we are, who we think we are, whatever. He says who we are. Our identity isn't defined by a disease or a role or a title or a job or any of that, or where you grew up or what your family says about you or anything like that, or what the enemy says about you. Your identity is in Christ. So when God says, well, this is who you are, then his actions don't depend on you. It depends on him. And when you learn more about God and who he is and what he's done for people in the past and who he's always been for them and will be for you.
Yeah.
Then it's easier to surrender in those big and little moments because you know who you're surrendering to. So for instance, how many times do I run around micromanaging every little thing you do? Am I like, don't forget to do this, don't forget? I don't do that because I know who you are. I'm like, you know, you're a big boy. You know what you're doing. Like, I know I can trust you to do the things you say you're going to do because I know who you are. I don't base what you're going to do on who I am. That seems silly, right? I base what you're going to do in our relationship on who you are because I know who you are. I've gotten to know you and so I'm surrendering my worries about who he is and what he says he's going to do based on who he is.
Right.
And I'm not holding on to it. I'm like, there you go. You go do you. And that's what we need to do with God.
Yes. But, you know, you're talking about relationships, but that's evolved. God has changed me from the man that I was when we got married to who I am today. Mm-hmm. And so when you say that there are certain things that I wouldn't say you would trust me with, there's certain things that we had to
get to know.
There are things that I wasn't addressing that she had to pray about. There are things that she was not addressing that I had to pray about for her. And so that goes back to what I'm saying. Instead of holding on to these expectations, well, you're telling me to do this, you're telling me to do that, but you're not doing it. Mm-hmm. And pointing the finger and she's, you know, maybe she's like, you need to do this. She might be right. But instead of pointing the finger and everybody not communicating, everybody just pushing off of their expectations on one another, maybe we need to pray about it more. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to surrender those things to God. Yep. Surrender those situations of your husband or your wife to God. Mm-hmm. And let God deal with it and let God deal with them. Yep. And God has dealt with me and God has dealt with you over the years and has helped us. Now, this way you don't have to do that anymore.
One of the reasons why you're 100% right. And one of the reasons why that is also relevant is because with heart disease, coming from a caregiver or a support person's point of view and a person fighting heart disease point of view, oh man, there's so much divorce and so much turmoil in marriages and families over heart disease. And that's one of our main focuses that we want to be addressing in our nonprofit, especially, is the family unit and how heart disease and that kind of adversity is tearing apart families because there's a lot of miscommunication and assumptions and people change and all of that stuff. So when you're talking about surrendering, the focus is lost and people are it's in chaos and everything. And so surrender is really important in that situation because you're not only surrendering to each other, but you're coming together on one common ground and surrendering it to God so that he can work out all of that stuff and change you. Yeah. And one of the reasons why we've been able to do that so successfully through all of this adversity is because I give him to God. I say, God's going to work with you more aggressively than me. I know, because I know God and I know God's character, then I say, here you go. Like, you know, you work with him. It's not just praying, oh Lord, oh help him, oh please help him. No, I'm like, no Lord, he's yours. You deal with him on these things because me dealing with it not only will be confrontational and it's like, you know, there's hurt feelings or I don't know him the way you do.
But that surrender blesses you.
Yeah, and then back and vice versa. So it's the same. We both do that. So God's first and then him, meaning I can give him to God and say, whatever's going on over there, I need you to handle. And then I end up being blessed because I'm not carrying that. Right. I'm not carrying it around.
It's really an act of obedience. It's like your father saying, no, you need to give that to me. Yep. And you're like, no, right? You're hiding it behind your back. Mm-hmm. What do you got behind your back? Nothing. Right? And he's like, okay, hand it over.
Well, it's on your face. Right. I didn't get cookies.
That's right. But your father wants you to be honest with him. your father wants you to release it to him. And it's an act of obedience.
Yeah.
And when you're obedient to your father, he will bless you. At first, there may be consequences.
Or it may not feel like a blessing.
It may not feel like a blessing.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I guarantee you, it is.
Well, one of the things that, and we'll leave with this, is the last word, is that I've seen this, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too, or if you haven't, I'll paint the picture. But there's this picture, this famous picture of Jesus holding this giant teddy bear behind his back, and this little girl in front of him, and he's knelt down, and she can't see it. He's got it behind his back, giant stuffed bear, and she has this little teddy bear. It's like this big, and she's clinging to it, and he's like, "Can I have it?" And she's like, "I don't want to let it go." And he's waiting to give her this huge blessing. It's bigger than her. The blessing is bigger than her. And she won't receive it until she hands over what she's clinging to, that she thinks is the thing.
Yeah.
And so if we don't do that, our hands aren't freed to take the blessing God wants to give us.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate word on surrender.
So this week get ready, guys.
Yeah.
We're talking about surrender this week. So let God speak to you.
Yeah.
This week. What is it that you're holding on to?
Yeah.
What is that? Maybe that favorite thing. Maybe it's that thing that you grew up with. Yeah. Maybe it's the thing that it's part of your identity. And God is now asking you to put that down, to surrender that to him. Why aren't you doing it? You know what that is.
Right.
And we need to trust him. We need to trust that he has our best interest in mind. And he knows everything. So think about those things today. Think about those things this week, because I have this funny feeling God's going to do.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's already talking today.
Yeah. Today is really spoken to us. I hope it spoke to you. I really do. And look, I love your comments. We love today's comments. If you are catching this on replay, keep in mind, we continually go over these comments. If you watch this on replay, please comment. We would still love to see these comments come in and see how God is touching your life. Just because you don't catch us live don't mean we won't interact with you. We love interacting with you guys. So again, if you're watching this on replay, please do that. And look, like we said when we opened, we started going live here on YouTube. We still have a few things we need to work out, but you're going to see some changes coming down the road, hopefully. And YouTube, going live on YouTube was one of them. And so I hope that we are able to grow this YouTube family. And if you've seen us on YouTube, please hit like and share. If you've seen this on Facebook, like and share. Okay. And, on YouTube,
If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We absolutely love your support there. We want to get into a conversation with you as well. So make sure you're commenting and you're liking there. We want to know what has God done in your life when you've surrendered? Like when you have surrendered something, what kind of release have you felt? What kind of breakthrough have you had? I just want to know what God's doing in your lives. I'd love to hear your story. So comment below and start that conversation. If you want to be notified, by the way, of any live broadcasts or any content that we're adding to our channel, make sure you hit that bell icon to make sure you get notified.
All right. You guys have a wonderful day, and we look forward to speaking to you tomorrow.
God bless.
Bye.